Hello, everybody. I am Jarrett Ross, the Genie Vlogger, and welcome to another live stream on Professional Genealogist Reacts. Today we have a special live stream, as many of the common attendees will notice. It's Monday instead of Tuesday, and usually we do Tuesday streams. Instead, we're doing it today. Part of it being no reaction today, no reaction video. But if you didn't know, I did have a new video come out on my main channel about a really cool new tool on GEDmatch, kind of more of an advanced version of the auto cluster. Well, not kind of, that's what it is. But if you haven't seen that, be sure to put that on your list to watch after the live stream because, hang out. Got a very light crowd today, so I guess maybe it's a good thing I've been doing Tuesdays because maybe Mondays aren't as good. But, doing the usual, just go through and say, the hellos to everyone. Hello, Tasha from Minnesota. Hello, Peter from Salzburg. My pleasure. I'm hoping maybe you're talking about the blog, the new tool. Hello, Alexandra from Germany. Hello, Sharp Lisa from Ontario. We have Ironicles and Sardonicles here. Sean from Ireland. Callum's here, yay, which actually Callum was here before, much earlier. And then Maven's here. I forgot to say last time, but the map is Philadelphia, I am guessing. And yeah, if you take a look, it looks kind of like Philly, but it's not. So I'm trying to see. Yeah, there's some stuff that kind of gives it away. I don't want to say too much, but it's not Philadelphia. You're within the right general region of the United States, though. I'll give you that much. And then Elias, hello from Ohio. Okay. So yeah, not too many people here today. So I guess we'll kind of just jump right into the question stuff. So as usual, I'll be answering questions from the Reddit. Actually, before we do get into that, I should mention for those that don't know, it's Roots Tech this week. Part of the reason why I'm doing this on a Monday, this is going to be a very interesting week. But on Friday, on the main channel, I will be doing a live stream from Roots Tech. For those in the chat who are like, who is Roots Tech? It is the largest genealogy conference in the world, which is held every year in Salt Lake City. And it's kind of like, the big mecca for genealogists to go, the big holiday. So it's like where we all see each other too and all of that. So if you've never gone to Roots Tech or heard of it, definitely look into it, check it out. It might be a little too late for some of you to be able to attend if you're far away, just, if you get tickets in time, great. But, I'm sure booking floats and stuff like that at this point would be difficult. But for today's stream, we'll answer the questions on Reddit. I will try to get to questions in the chat, which we do have such a light amount of people today that, at least right now, that it might be pretty easy to catch everything in the chat. But I always say that if you do a super chat or super sticker, I guarantee that I'll answer whatever question, if you have one with that, in the stream. Otherwise, we're going to go through the top questions of all time, which I've looked at a few already, and they're all actually some of the older ones. So that's kind of good. Get some of these older ones that haven't been answered yet. And yeah, so starting out, there's this one, which I don't know if we'll answer everything because some of it is just asking us to basically do research. And it seems like this is actually a shortened post from a previous one. So edited for brevity after the last edition of this series, also to add 2 new brick walls. So the original, when you found articles you could on newspapers.com, when you found 2 divorces, thanks to those news articles, and no real info on the second husband, and now have 3 possible surnames, are confronted with an uncommon name that's frequently misspelled. Zula, okay. And you can't trace the individual past the 1930 census. What do you do? I've tried searching for more marriage records and death records, but to no avail. For the record, 1930 is progress, and progress that wouldn't have been made without newspaper.com, but I really want to dismantle this brick wall. Help. A more recent brick wall, my great uncle. Okay, yeah, so I guess we'll go through all three. His given name was Owen Smith Gleason, but he married a woman, I'm not 100% sure on her name, who disliked his given name and insisted he go by the anglicized version, John. Okay. He's listed as John in his brother Roger's obituary from 1978 and Owen in his father's obituary from 1975. In both cases, only by first name. So I at least know he was alive when his brother died in 1978. Given that he's referred to as John, I've drawn the conclusion that Roger and Owen John must have remained in contact despite Owen John not keeping contact with his father or sister, therefore have eliminated all death records prior to that date. He'd be well over 100 if he were still alive. The other monkey wrench is that it's possible he went by John Smith. He was a World War II vet and was wounded in action. Could I use that to my benefit in trying to find him? If so, how? Any other advice on where to look? Actually, all right, let's, this is a lot of information, so we don't want to jump too much around. So going off of this second one, actually, and then we'll jump back to the first. I mean, I'm not 100% sure exactly what the question is here. I guess you're basically trying to trace his ancestry back or forward, or, you know, you're kind of saying all this stuff about, you know, you found this and that, and, you know, he was alive here. So I guess, you know, are you trying to find his death record, or, you know, there's no specific about what you're actually trying to find. You're just kind of vomiting a lot of information is the only way I can really think of saying it. Just like saying all this information and then, you know, asking, could I use this to my benefit in trying to find him? Are you trying to find where he's buried? Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of a big thing. What's your actual research question here? And this is something that actually is probably a good point to just harp on, is that a lot of people, when they do research, they just kind of go in a general trying to trace back the ancestry, which can be a serious research question. But the best way to go about it sometimes is to get very specific. So instead of just saying, I want to trace the ancestry, you say, I want to find the names of this person's parents. So that's the first step that you've got to do. You know, the oldest generation that you're trying to trace back further, well, the first step is, who are their parents? Well, here, if they're, you know, depending on what their research question is or what they're trying to accomplish, will change how to go about it. If they're trying to find out where he's buried, then it may be a little bit different if they're just trying to find a death record. Because if they're just trying to find a death record, you just need to figure out what's the deal with the vital records wherever they're living. Whereas if you're trying to actually figure out where they were buried, you might be able to find the death record to help you in figuring out where they were buried. But you may need to use other sources. Now, those are pretty common research, or pretty closely connected research questions. So there would probably be a lot of overlap in what you would do in those questions. But then the other thing is, if they're trying to trace the family tree forward, so not just find him in the sense of find, you know, where he's buried, but find him in the sense of finding his living descendants, that's a whole nother thing towards everything else, where finding the, you know, where he's buried, the death information may give you a little bit more, but you may not find anything. You know, obituaries can be great. You might find it where it says the, you know, children and this and that and all of that. Sometimes you might find obituaries that just say so-and-so died on this date. It can really vary. So that's the first thing, is figure out what your actual research question is. If you haven't yet, you might just not have said it. The first question here again, which I'm not going to read through it, but I am going to, or not read through it on stream, but I am going to kind of scan it again because I kind of don't remember exactly what they're asking, but because they put it away too, a weird way too. Instead of just saying, you know, what they're asking, they're like, put yourself in my shoes, when you found all the articles you could find on this, and you've done this. Okay, so basically it's can't trace the individual past the 1930 federal census. So in that case, the question is again, what do you mean by past? Do you mean past as in like going further into the past? Or do you mean as in like I can't get closer in time after the 1930 census? So once again, it's a matter of what is your actual question here? What do you do? I've tried searching for more marriage records, but no avail. For the record, 1930 is progress. Progress from what? Where was your best before 1920 census, and now you've got 1930 thanks to this newspaper? Or is it the opposite way where you had the 1940 and then all of a sudden this newspaper? So I think that's one of the things. This person really needs to get more finite on what are their questions. Now, this is a 2-year-old question. Let's see. There we go. April 22nd, 2022. So yeah, just under 2 years. Okay, so lastly, any advice on finding translators who volunteer or have affordable fees? I've hit a language barrier on my Dutch, Norwegian, Swedish family lines, families from that border. I want to go further back, but what info Ancestry has is not in English. Also, any advice on sources for Dutch or Scandinavian genealogy sources outside of Ancestry? Now, in terms of the Scandinavian, Norwegian stuff, that I'm not super familiar with. That's where my suggestion would be go to the Family Search Wiki and find the wikis pages that are going to be helpful for you. And those will probably list a lot of available records. In terms of the Dutch, I can get very in depth into that because that's kind of one of my specialties. And there are a lot of places you can go. The number one thing with Dutch records, which I think this is common with everywhere really, is you need to first figure out where in the Netherlands they are. So it's going to be very different if they're in Zeeland versus Noord-Holland. There may be overlap in where you look, but the way that the records work in the Netherlands is any records that are digitized that are government records have to be available for free online. There are limitations to that, obviously, but in terms of genealogical records, it means everything's available for free. So there's a lot of websites you can go. There's Open Archiven. There's Vivas V. Actually, here let's pull up some of these. So we have Vivas V. We have Open Archiven. And then, these are some of just kind of the general ones, but then, let's say that maybe your family is from Amsterdam. Well, then you'll want to pull up the Amsterdam archives, or maybe they're not from Amsterdam, but they are from Noord-Holland somewhere. So then you'll want to go and find the Noord-Holland archive. Or maybe they are from Zeeland. And you'll want to find the Zeeland archives, which that's one I'm actually not as familiar with. I know it's somewhere here. I think it's actually technically Zeeland, not Zeeland. But they don't have a website, I guess. Oh, interesting. But either way, wherever you're looking, you that's going to help you. But in terms of before that, where you may be able to find where they are, Vivas V, Open Archive, and they almost all have a Dutch English version. So even if they don't, you can always use Google Translate to help with all that stuff. And then for the other part of the question, in terms of hiring translators, or I guess you were really only asking about translators, but let's just assume that you were also asking about researchers. One of the best places to look is the AP Gen directory. And when you do a search through the AP Gen directory, you can find who has certain specialties. But even more, if you're looking for people that are in a certain place, you can actually look for, where do they live? So for Netherlands. So there's 7 people. Some of these who I recognize, many of you probably recognize some of them as well. Most likely John, who's a very, very well-known and very well-respected Dutch genealogist. But there are a lot of others as well. And then you can always kind of just search for other, genealogists who specialize in Dutch genealogy or Swedish or Norwegian or whatever you're looking for. So, all right, I think that actually, let's see. Okay, yeah. I just wanted to see if they posted anything that really gave more of an answer to anything, but I'm not worried about it. February 26th. Whoa. Okay. I feel like I've seen Illustrious Act before. That name seems familiar. Okay. Let me check chat. Check chat. Also blow my. Okay. John's here. Hello, John. I do see we've almost doubled the amount of people we started with, so good to see that. And we have Leslie here coming in from Santa Cruz. So, yeah, maybe it sounds like a job for you. Yeah, Facebook have groups if you use that. All right, so let's see. Question 625 centimorgan match. Only options I see is half aunt or first cousin once removed. Any thoughts? Well, yeah, I mean, sure. Let's just take a look. This is a good one. And if you can, let me know how many segments do you share with them? So first we'll start with the shared centimorgan project. So taking a look here. Now, if you're referencing in terms of whatever site you're testing on, where they're giving you the they're giving you the what do they even call it? Basically it's kind of like the relationship range or the most likely one. So it might say, half on or first cousin once removed or something like that. But I mean, based on what we have here, let's increase this. So with what we have here, we've got second great aunt, an uncle, half great aunt, uncle, half first cousin once removed, half great niece or nephew, all that. Okay, and then we have 18 segments on Ancestry. So great. So this is Ancestry, and we have 18 segments. So we'll get into something in a little bit more. So, so then these are the best options up here in the 65% area. But then for this 34% area, these are still quite likely, but not as likely as these. So one of the things that could be helpful is if other people within your family tree have tested and seeing how much they match this match as well. So even if it's a sibling, a child probably won't, any descendants of yours probably won't be as any helpful, assuming you have any, but a sibling would be helpful. Your parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, anything like that. For one, it's going to help you figure out which side. This is an unknown grandparent. Wait, unknown. Wait, you don't mean grandparent by G? Like, oh, is this? Do you mean like this is through your unknown grandparent? Well, I'm waiting for you to answer. Hello, DJ's Variety Channel. Thank you for joining again. Okay, well, I'll wait for the question. So we have all of these different options, and age is going to be a factor as well. So if you can also answer, do you know what their age is? And if you're comfortable with it, tell me what your age is, or at least a general age, if that is fine. Basically, it's just a matter of figuring out, are you of the same generation about, or could you be expecting more of a gap between generations? So what I'm going to do now is we're going to pull up SegCM, and this is where that segment part comes in helpful. So we should, okay, that's coming up pretty big enough, I think. So we have a 625 centimorgan match, and the number of segments is 18. Now, if you're doing 23andMe, you'll want to switch to the 23andMe option because it has to do with how they're reading the DNA. Half identical regions versus full identical regions. Not going to get into it right now, but if you want to look that up, you can Google it. ISOGG has a great article about it. So anyway, so we're going to do that. And now this is going to give us our best options based on what they have in terms of segments, because when it comes to the segments, they found that specific relationships, the recombination rates can be different. So by using the recombination rates, that's going to affect the number of segments expected. And thus using that information, they come up with these probabilities. So here we're getting this group that is the highest, which is that half first cousin or half great or second great aunt, uncle, niece, or nephew. Then we're getting some of this other information. Okay, let's see. Someone I managed, 25-year-old, the match is about 60. 25-year-old paternal grandfather is unknown. That is where the match is. Okay, so we're probably looking at someone with at least one generation moved, possibly two, possibly three, but that might be pushing it, but it's always possible. Always want to consider the possibilities. Yeah. And there is the possibility they're the same generation. I know I have cousins in my generation, second cousins, but second cousins who are my generation that are my literally born the same year as my dad. So we get this, which I don't know if you've seen the SegCM, but that might be helpful. So it's kind of falling close to what you were saying, except it's falling more towards the half first cousin group instead of the full. Which if it's a missing grandfather, then that leads me to wonder, is this a descendant of that grandfather? Okay. So I figured 25-year-old, their dad is about 60. So, okay. So that's helpful because I'm guessing the dad's side is the dad's the one with the unknown father. So it's an unknown paternal. Yeah. Oh yeah. You said it. Unknown paternal grandfather. So, and dad's 60. So this would be, yeah, I mean, the thing is it is, they're saying half first cousin or half great aunt or uncle, things like that. So, yeah, I mean, my guess, just with the information you've given me so far and understanding that this is just me making a hypothesis and there's a lot of other possibilities, my strongest hypothesis would definitely be that I'm thinking maybe a half first cousin or well, I guess, yeah, there, but, so yeah, 60 years old. Sorry, I'm kind of cutting myself off from finalizing that hypothesis just because I just kind of want to review it all again. Grandfather. Do you know no, this is Ancestry. You won't know X chromosome stuff. Yeah, because that'd be if this was on Family Tree DNA and you can see the X chromosome, that would be really helpful too. Because basically you'd expect no X chromosome, and if you get X chromosome, then it's like, okay, this is something else. So, yeah, the mystery grandfather could be the match's dad or uncles. Yeah, so that's certainly possible. I mean, the half aunt, uncle, niece, nephew, that's what they would be. And it is a probability. And even more, if it's a paternal match, that's the most likely scenario of this. which is what we're looking for. So his paternal half aunt or uncle. So yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And this is matching up too with that. So yeah, so I mean, it sounds like you're on the right track. I would say it sounds pretty likely from what you're saying. Especially with the ages and stuff like that. Let's see, we were talking. Yeah, so same thing here. It's kind of putting it into the not, it's like it's very probable, but it's not the most likely scenario based on just the numbers. So yeah, so I think that let's see. So far found 3 possibilities: father or 2 maternal uncles. Haven't found siblings of father yet. Yeah. I wonder if you could get the dad to test. There's a few ways that I would suggest possibly going further into this. And it depends on who you can test. So number one, if you can get the father of your tester, the 25-year-old to test, the one who has the unknown father, that's, number one, but I don't know if that's going to be possible. Number two, if your tester has siblings who've tested, especially at least, or, if one's available, that's great. But if you have 2 siblings of the tester and you get both of them to test, that will allow you to do visual phasing. And through visual phasing, you can then identify which segments you would expect from the unknown grandfather, and then auto segment, do like an auto segment run and look for the clusters that cluster up over that segment. So that's getting into like really advanced genetic genealogy stuff. All right, I'm going to go back because I saw some other stuff. So ironically, sardonically, I have a new question. Is it faux pas to share research material with people in the community that have access to different paid resources? Like I pay for company A and you have access to company B. I mean, I know that a lot of people share research material. I mean, once people find stuff within these databases, a lot of them will snapshot the record or download it and put it into trees. So I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think if you are, it is another thing if you're kind of doing it where, I guess you're going beyond whatever the terms of service say. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be the best one to answer this question because I feel like this would be kind of like a legal type of question thing. And as far as I know, people constantly share records from all the different sources and such. And I think there have only been a few times that I've seen where it's a serious issue. The biggest thing that you really need to just understand when sharing stuff is the copyright behind it. And actually, I wonder if it's still available. There's a genealogist, Janice Sellers, who had an amazing talk from Roots Tech years ago about copyright. Online does not equal free. And yeah, highly recommend this talk. So yeah, I guess this is from 2018, but you can see the full thing here. And highly recommend it, just in even, just generally understanding the, what is copyright free and what isn't, and, just different ways to tell. And yeah, so, I mean, this is from 2018. So, I don't know if the laws have changed in any way to change that. Imagine if so, it would have probably been a big deal. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, cool. All right, so this question, this is from Deleted, so we're not going to comment about why that we answered it. But question: high Iberian percentage for no reason, a mystery. And we look at it, and they are seemingly Moroccan and Algerian, 80.1%, 1.4% West African, 13.2% Iberian, 2.7% Italian, and 2.6% Ashkenazi Jewish. And to be 100% honest, it is not surprising at all. On this channel, I often talk about the common Northwestern European admixture, which you're always seeing, Britain, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Scandinavian countries, French, German, and, sometimes the Low Countries if they talk about that stuff. And this is basically the North African version of that. So I have seen a good amount of North African results, not a lot, but enough to know that this is quite common. Number one, it makes a ton of sense when you think about the history of North Africa and Iberia and Italy, the Mediterranean, the Umayyad Caliphate, the Reconquista, all of this history. There's so much population flow for hundreds, if not, really thousands of years throughout North Africa and into Iberia, and as well Italy too. So all of these make sense. This all just kind of fits together. So, there's a lot of kind of mentioning down here of the same stuff. I'm not going to go through it, but when I saw this, I thought, let me show this because, people always love to see the admixture stuff, and we don't always get to talk about the common North African admixture that we expect, like we do with Northwestern European. So, but we will tag it. We do want to say that we've reviewed it. Let's see. All right, Jeremy has a question. I am trying to get distant family members to take a big Y700 test from Family Tree DNA, but they have expressed reservations that it will be used for IgG purposes. Is there any truth to this? At this point, big Y700, and I mean, not even that, the entire Y chromosome database on Family Tree DNA is not available for investigative genetic genealogy use. The only Y DNA database that is currently available for investigative genetic genealogy use is the database held by Colleen Fitzpatrick, the company's called Identifinders. And it's a company by Colleen Fitzpatrick. And this is where, if investigative genetic genealogy researchers want to get Y results, this is the only place that they can go right now, is Identifinders. Beyond that, there is another database called MitoY, which is by Mags Golden, MitoY DNA. And I don't know if it's anyone other than Mags. I think is it just Mags? I thought it was, I don't know if anyone knows, but Mags is a big part of WikiTree as well. So this database will eventually be leading towards IgG use, as far as I know. But for the Family Tree DNA database, it is not available for IgG use. Now, with that said, that does not mean that they may change that in the future. My understanding is they have no interest in changing that in the future. So the answer to your question is that, yeah, it is not available now, but it can't be guaranteed that it won't be in the future. There are other ways to go about doing Y DNA testing outside of Family Tree DNA in databases that have no interest in doing IgG use. So Family Tree DNA is owned by Gene, which does allow access to the Family Tree DNA autosomal database for IgG use. So if there were a company that were to allow it, Family Tree DNA might be towards the top of that list, although, like I said, I don't think they really plan on doing that, at least anytime soon. But in terms of if you want to be careful and say, okay, well, if you're willing to test and we want to do the Y, but you just don't want to do Family Tree DNA because they have allowed IgG use for their other part of the database, go through whole genome sequencing. And I would suggest Nebula. There's also the company Dante, although both companies I've heard issues with, but I've heard a lot worse issues with Dante, from what I've understood. I also have a video about nebula genomics, and actually, if you go and buy the test, go watch that video and then go click through my affiliate link. Helps support my channel and doesn't cost you any extra thing. But with nebula whole genome sequencing, once you've done that DNA testing, you can upload to YFull. And through YFull, you can do DNA matching. You get into the phylogenetic tree and all of that. It does not allow you to get into the family tree DNA database. So if there are specific Y DNA matches you're looking to access that are only in the FTDNA database, going this route, you'll lose out on those. But sometimes there's a question of if they're not willing to do FTDNA at all, but they are willing to do this other, better something than nothing. But if they are fine with the fact that, I guess the best way to put it is just make sure that they understand, with this company for family tree DNA, that yeah, part of the database is allowed for IgG use, but not this part. Yet we don't know what the future holds. I hope that was helpful. And then let's see. Please take my question from, is perhaps German misread as Scandinavian Baltic on my known answer? If you can repost your question, because I hate trying to scroll back up and trying to find comments and all of that. That's why I always say I never promise that I'll be able to answer questions in the chat. So, based on what you're saying here, is perhaps German misread as Scandinavian Baltic. All my known ancestors are from the Balkans / South Austria and Germany. So I guess, did you get Scandinavian Baltic readings? And if so, to me, that makes sense if you're talking about Austria and Germany, because, well, if you're talking about the southern parts, yeah, maybe not quite as much of a connection to Scandinavian areas in the Baltics, but I mean, there was a lot of population flow. So, I'll try to keep an eye out if you repost your question. John Wikitree, I guess you said that probably for Mags, right? My siblings believe that the DNA will be stolen and planted by the government for IgG. Why they haven't taken the test? Yeah, I think that's getting way beyond realistic fears and realistic worries, because there are, with DNA testing, I think that people should understand there are realistic things that could happen with DNA testing. You DNA test with a company, and it could be anything where as small as they sell your, data to some testing company or things like that. Although, I think there are, there are some laws about that stuff. And, when you do these tests, they have to ask for permission and things like that. But I think when you start talking about, the government planting stuff and all of that, yeah, I guess it's always possible, but I think that's going way beyond anything. And in all reality, the whole, government IgG thing, they can plant DNA evidence now. It doesn't matter if you're in an IgG database or not. And if they're planting evidence, they probably are planting evidence knowing it's you and will probably lead it to you, whether it's with IgG or not. So I think if they're really worried about government entities trying to, I can't even think of the word right now. But scapegoat them to be the, whatever of a crime, then I think it doesn't matter about IgG or not. For them to do that, they need to get your actual DNA, not the letters of your DNA. They need to wait and watch you eat and then go and take your fork. So, oh, wonderful! Glad that was very helpful. My pleasure. Yeah, my dad has no qualms about being used to catch a criminal. He said that if he can help to catch someone, so be it. That's how a lot of people feel with this stuff too. That's certainly how I feel. And yeah. All right. Okay. Not even the grandparents are known to have Scandinavian or Baltic ancestry. Okay, so still not really the question. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, with the admixtures, and I guess maybe I didn't explain it enough. I don't know how often you've watched these streams or watch my content, but with the genetic admixture percentages, they are nowhere near perfect. And with a lot of different population groups, there is so much correlation to other seemingly separate population groups that in reality they share so much DNA that it can be very difficult to decipher between them because both groups will share it. So when you're looking at people that come from populations that have strong connections with other population groups, so in your case, assuming that you were talking about the South German Austrian connection, well, it certainly makes sense that even though it's not necessarily northern Germany, near the Schleswig-Holstein region or Hamburg or something like that, near actual Denmark, even so, it doesn't mean that there isn't a strong connection to Scandinavian countries, whether it be your actual ancestry or misreading DNA that's technically from Germany, Austria, whatever, that, hundreds or thousands of years ago, not hundreds of thousands of years, but hundreds of years ago, or maybe even 1,000 years ago, there was a huge population flow of people from the area that you're from into Scandinavian areas. And now a lot of those descendants have that DNA. And through the DNA testing that they've done to figure out these things, that they've just misread it as that. So when you get into the admixture stuff, focusing so much on, why am I getting these percentages? The thing is, you haven't told us the percentage amounts. So if you're looking at very small percentages of the Scandinavian or Baltic, then, it's even less surprising because smaller percentages have a lower confidence of being true. Doesn't mean they're not true, but lower confidence. So, okay. Evan, watching while I work on my thesis, are you excited for any particular Roots Tech sessions? I think I'm most excited to see some of the AI sessions. I have to go through and look and see. Again, I was kind of going through and get my schedule set. I have so much stuff going on, which, by the way, if anyone is going to be at Roots Tech and you do see me, be sure to say hello. If I am looking flustered and running off somewhere, I may be off to give some sort of talk or have to be off to a meeting or something. So, I always love Roots Tech, but once you start kind of getting into the actually having to do stuff at Roots Tech, it's like, oh, wow, I actually have to schedule this almost like it's like a work day. Okay. Don't want to hog chat, but quickly, do you have a video that focused on a suggested workflow? I get so sidetracked and confused by all the resources. So, I don't, but there is a suggested workflow that I've talked about in terms of descendancy research that I call sweeping the branches, that I was thinking about making a video about. Although, honestly, I've kind of tried to avoid tutorial videos just because I try to be appealing to a much wider audience and kind of, I guess, think of myself as like, if you think of YouTube as like a funnel of bringing people into the genealogy community and getting interested in genealogy, I like to think of myself as the top of the funnel where I have a wider general audience appeal to get people who wouldn't necessarily search out genealogy stuff to find it. And then, with Genealogy TV and Family History Fanatics, Lisa Louise Cook's channel and Amy Johnson Crow and so many others. There's so many others, so many good, really good channels that then talk about the actual tutorials and stuff. And so I kind of think of it like that. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I've gone about it, like a video explaining when researching a person, what resources you use in what order, etc. Thanks again in advance. Honestly, the best ones to watch for that was the original idea for the YouTuber Family Tree series. Was I had somebody who emailed me saying that, they've always loved watching videos about family tree research, but it always feels like you watch a video or read a blog and it will go into the research about the one line, and then it won't be a while until you see more research on that same line. And so you don't really get the feel of what the flow is like researching an entire family tree instead of just one line. And so that was what gave me the idea of like, well, oh, that'd be a great way to build a family tree. Who would I do that for? Oh, big YouTubers. And so then I started to try to figure out who would be good. And that's when I reached out to Sam Aronow because I figured Jewish specialty. He's Jewish, has a channel all about Jewish history, so it all kind of worked together. And then slowly, as I did that, after because I did the first season with Sam, where I was building his tree, so that's why they were first in seasons. So it was 7 episodes of building his tree. Then I think the second season was Mr. Beat. Then the third season was Matt Baker. And then after the third season, that was when I realized that, for one, showing the research like I was, which was showing, okay, here's me adding everything and all that. Like I said, like actually showing how I was researching and all that. But I found that it caused the videos to be too slow, and then it slowly morphed into what it is now, where it's a much more narrative, quicker sort of thing. So if you watch those first 3 seasons, Sam Aronow, Matt Baker from Useful Charts, and the Mr. Beat season, those ones get the most in depth into here's the research I did and where I looked and when I looked, that sort of stuff. So that's probably the closest thing I might have, I think. So yeah, so I think I marked that. Yeah, reviewed. Okay. So then we have this one, another 2-year-old question. So this one, I think, is one of the older ones. It'll pop up. So yeah, February 25th, 2022. Almost 2 years to the day. Wow. Okay. I'm having trouble getting hints or suggested going further than 5 to 7 generations, depending on the branch. That does not look like a happy click. I don't know if I want to. I didn't take a look at this one beforehand, so I didn't see that. Yeah, I don't know if is anyone familiar with this site. I am very careful about clicking stuff like this because I don't want to click it and then all of a sudden Jammer 2001 has access to tons of stuff. CMG.click. Yeah, I don't see anything about this CMG site, and I'm not comfortable with that. If anyone wants to take the risk. I will say I'm very happy to see things picked up. When we started out, there was only about 15 people in here. Now we've got 30 plus. So I should mention, since we have so many more people, I didn't mention, but are re-mentioning what I said before. Roots Tech is this week. That's part of the reason why I'm doing the review today, or the live stream today. Tomorrow I'll be off to Utah, and then Friday I'll be doing a live stream on my main channel from Roots Tech. So everyone cross your fingers and hope that goes well, because I'm going to be using a new camera that I've only used a bit before. I've never used it to live stream. So probably going to need to play around a little bit with that, see how that goes. Maybe I'll try a random live stream at some other point this week too. I don't know. We'll have to see. So yeah. So this, do you think Ancestry will introduce a real chromosome browser in the future? I had heard rumors that they were considering it. I hope so. For years and years and years, they kept harping on the fact that they didn't want to do it because it was going to be, that's the most, because of privacy, but basically it was the most invasive tool available, because basically, if you have the variant for a certain disease and then you see that you're matching that relative in that same spot of your DNA, then they have that variant. And so that's kind of, I think, a big part of where they don't like that. But I have heard rumors as well that there are I guess some changes or something where I guess maybe they're going to do it. We'll have to see. They've been making a lot of changes lately that have not exactly been that well received and that I have not been that happy about either. So I don't know. I hope so. It'd be great. It'd be great to be able to do DNA painting. Thank you very much, John. Thank you. I don't know what you mean, but they got to watch you and then take your fork. Yep. Okay. Okay. Oh, hello from Woofies in Oak Island. Hey, Mom. So I'm fixing lines on Family Search so people can more accurately find cousins at Rootstack. Yeah, I actually found through the relative finder that a couple of years ago, apparently someone went into Family Search and did a really bad merge of my great grandma with somebody else, and it like completely messed up the entire tree. And I realized it because I was looking at matches where it was like, you're matching this close. And I was like, what? If I know that. And I looked it up and it was like, there's no way. And I looked into it and it was like one person went and did a really bad merge, and then another person went and added even more bad stuff. And it like, and I will tell you too, the way that Family Search's system goes and editing that stuff, oh my gosh, it was so bad. Like it was such a good practice in understanding why I like Genie and even WikiTree so much more than Family Search. So yeah. Yeah, I saw that they announced final keynote Kristen Chenoweth. Yeah. I had to look up her IMDb to figure out where I knew her from. I actually have to do it again because I'm like trying to remember. Yeah. So okay. Alexandra, thank you so much. You're always so amazing. Hi, Jared. I have a question. Is it worthy to do a big Y 700 test for my dad? He did the Y37 but did not get any matches. However, I would like to know if we can get a refined migration map. Thank you. So, if your focus is both in getting matches as well as having the best understanding of where your paternal line sits within the phylogenetic family tree, you definitely want to do a Y30. You'll definitely want to do a big Y700. So with Y37, it is going to give you an okay haplogroup, but by doing big Y700, that's going to give you a very, very, a much more specific haplogroup, possibly by thousands, if not tens of thousands of years, depending on what his group is. So if that is part of the equation where that is what you seek, then yes. But if you only are really seeking the matches and not quite so much, being in that specific spot in the phylogenetic tree, if your dad has no matches at Y37, doing the big Y700 may unlock some other matches that he's just not seeing right now, but it's not really going to be that much more helpful because there's still going to be really distant matches. Honestly, if he's not getting any at Y37, it's very possible he may not get any even at the big Y. So yeah, that's what I would say is if you are, wanting to do the refined migration map, which you do say, or I guess, get the most specific haplogroup you possibly can, big Y700 is the way to go. Now, the other thing to consider too is that even if the main focus is the matches, by doing big Y700 now, then you have the ability to instantly analyze any future matches at the best amount. So, instead of waiting to get a good match to go, okay, now let's do a big Y, already doing it, you're already ready, set to go. So hopefully that helps. All right, we're gonna skip this jammers question. I feel bad a little bit, but I don't know, that worries me. So, yeah, and if you have any follow-ups, Alexandra, let me know. I'll keep an eye out for them. If you want to do a super sticker again, I won't stop you, but don't feel the need to. I think you've done more super chats and super stickers than most anybody. So, hey, if anyone wants to compete with her, I won't stop you. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Straight math 9461 from 20 days ago. I'm Ghanaian and Nigerian. Here are my heritage results. Okay, let's see. So I've been told by my cousin that my great grandma had Tuareg, probably from Mali, hence why I have Malian cousins who are Tuareg and Portuguese roots. But for some reason, I have no Portuguese DNA, but I have a Portuguese distant cousin. Does it mean I may have some Portuguese in me? I also have Scandinavian, which is very shocking to me. Also got Papuan 0.8%. So the first thing to answer, I have cousins who have Tuareg and Portuguese roots, but for some reason I have no Portuguese DNA, but I have a Portuguese distant cousin. Does it mean I may have some Portuguese in me? No, it does not. Just because you're matching someone who has Portuguese ancestry doesn't mean that they do. Think of it this way. If you have a sibling and they marry somebody who is from Britain, and then they have children, their children are going to have British ancestry. And then if you have children with somebody with the same, Nigerian ancestry as you, then, you're not going to see that. So the children of your siblings having that ancestry doesn't mean that your children have that too. And so it's the same thing where just because the cousin has it doesn't mean that you have that ancestry. So yeah. So okay. So we have the Nigerian, which let's pull up a map of Africa to be helpful, because I know for me, I don't consider myself that great with African countries. Although I guess when I did that live stream, I kind of proved myself a little different. So looking at the general region here, the main question is about the well, I guess that is about the Portuguese, but I'm Ghanaian and Nigerian. But he says, I've been told by my cousins that my great grandma had Tuareg, probably from Mali. And when we look at the results, we get the Nigerian, and it says, Ghana and then Southern and Central Africa. Then we get the Sierra Leonean, and we're getting Kenyan, which is more of our Eastern African, but then we get a general West African, general Central, general North African, general Masi. And then let's see this second image. And then we get a little bit of Scandinavian, a little bit of Baltic, and then the Papuan. So when we look at this with the Mali, I don't know the population flow between the different tribes and all of that, which, that's kind of a big part of knowing this stuff is understanding the history of the population flow. And I know that's kind of one of the biggest issues a lot of African genealogists have with DNA tests, is that the way that they define things doesn't make sense with the tribal regions, which would thus have the biggest effect on the population flows, or at least as I understand it from African historians. So it certainly would make sense to me that, knowing this general region, I believe, has a lot of kind of different connections throughout it. It's certainly possible, great grandmother from the areas of Mali. But then the other part of the question also have Scandinavian, which is very shocking to me. And they had, where was it? Yeah, the 2.1% Scandinavian with 0.8% Baltic. So an almost total 3% European in a sense. And if they're from Africa, I would be curious, is this a European ancestor? Like all of the European DNA is coming from a single recent European ancestor, which at 3% we're looking at about a third great grandparent. So, oh, thank you so much, ironically, sardonically. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I came on to put my typical banner below where we can see third great grandparents 3.125%. And so that's where, we'd be looking, could be a second great grandparent, could be a third, could be a fourth great grandparent, but in that general region. Oh, wow. Well, I'm glad that I could be the first that you gave that to. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I truly do. But yeah, so going to this question, that's where I'd be very curious is, what that could be. And with a third great grandparent, fourth great, or I guess just the third great grandparent, assuming that this person's about my age and has general similar generation gaps, a third great grandparent is going to be somebody born about early to mid 1800s. So for a lot of my third great grandparents, they were born in the 1820s, 1830s, 1840s, and 1850s. So, fourth great grandparents, a little bit earlier than that, getting into the late 1700s, second great grandparents kind of being a little bit later, obviously getting into the later 1800s. So, that would be the thing with that Scandinavian is it could be that far back. And if you think third great grandparents, think of it like this in terms of the fact that your second great grandparents are your grandparents' grandparents. So your third great grandparents are your grandparents' great grandparents. So that can kind of help in terms of thinking of why it might be unknown to you, assuming that that's coming from one recent common European ancestor. So, yeah. And then my heritage is not good at ethnicities. That is another point a lot of people like to make. My heritage is one of the sites that has, or it is the site that I probably hear the most complaints about in terms of the big five. The big five being Ancestry DNA, Family Tree DNA, 23andMe, My Heritage, and Living DNA. Viewed. Genealogist reacts live stream February 6, 2025. All right. Alexandra, thank you. I'm very interested in getting a most precise migration path. My dad's haplogroup map ends in Morocco, and I'd like to know if it goes to Europe at some point or stays there. Yeah, definitely do the big Y then. And once you've done the big Y, what can also be helpful is upload his results into Y full. There is I forgot how much it is. It's not that much. I want to say, 45 pounds. So, with how much you've given to me, I imagine this would be something that would not be too difficult to do. But once you do your big 700, you can see you can do these different uploads and get into Y full, which has its own database of other matches. So there may be matches in Y full that aren't in Family Tree DNA. And then it also puts you into their phylogenetic tree. Oh, so I think I've shown this before, but so like this is mine, which is right now my subclade, the closest match I have. We have a most recent common ancestor born sometime between 75 to 600 years ago, and they estimate about 200 YBP, meaning 200 years before present. Let's make that bigger so everyone can see that. So that's mine. That's me right there. My paternal line traces to Chernivtsi Oblast in Ukraine, and we spoke Yiddish. Doesn't trace that far. So, yeah. So yeah, definitely, I would highly suggest doing it. Then do the big Y700, get that up into Y full, and you'll get a lot out of it in terms of the haplogroup stuff. Hey, Jared, I had a bad experience on Genie with merging, which is why I moved to Family Search. Not sure what the solution should be for collaborative trees. Yeah, I mean, the thing with collaborative trees is basically just the same issue with any sort of, open source editing type of thing, is that it opens up the ability to have so many amazing people work on it, but it also opens up the ability for people that don't know what they're doing or bad actors or just whatever. And just, even people that may know what they're doing that just are not very good collaborators, very abrasive, it's just very difficult. And that's, each site has their own tools to combat that. For me personally, I like Genie's best. But I kind of, in some ways, I kind of wish that they would adopt a little bit stricter of a system in some of them. Um, Kind of similar to how Wikipedia is in a sense. I don't know if WikiTree has it like that, because I know I know WikiTree decently well, but I don't know the ins and outs of how they do a lot of the different stuff in terms of like they have committees and stuff like that. Whereas, with Genie, we do the curator system, and curators are able to lock stuff and all of that. But when I talk about Wikipedia, I used to be a Wikipedian, and with Wikipedia, there's just so much in terms of the policies. So like the Wikipedia policy stuff, about and how to handle things, content policies, conduct, and it's just, and the thing is if you go through these, a lot of this stuff can apply to stuff in these collaborative trees, talking about what to say, what not to say, how to deal with people, I mean, like one of the things a lot of people don't know about Wikipedia, no original research, which is, something genealogists hate because then you can't really do stuff. But basically the way that Wikipedia works is you have to use secondary sources over primary sources. And so basically if you do use primary sources, it is very restricted. And, I'm not saying that this is the kind of policy that these collaborative sites should adopt, but I think that there are a lot of these different policies and guidelines that could be adopted. And, Genie's curator system allows it so that we come up with different guidelines and things like that, and different rules. But yeah, there's a lot of issues with collaborative trees. And so I think as time goes on, we may see more and more solutions that may make it better. But at this point, yeah, it is a big difficulty with things. Yeah, Callum, you taking Big Y 700 has no matches, and it happens. But it used to be like that for autosomal DNA databases too. When I first started testing in 2013, it was very common for people to do a DNA test and like they'd get like a handful of matches at best. Well, not at best, but just it takes time. You only get matches of people who are your actual matches that are also testing there. So if your family isn't as interested, no one's testing. Yeah. Karma Gal, I just wish that WikiTree would get an app. If I'm on my phone, it's difficult to see everything at times. Yeah, I personally hate doing stuff on my phone for genealogy though. So like I've always been like, I don't understand why people use the Ancestry app or the Family Search app, which I thought they're oh yeah. Sorry, you said WikiTree. So yeah, but I've never been the biggest fan of doing stuff on the phone, but it is what it is. Um oh no. Whoa, I'm back. That was weird. I don't know where I lost out on. So yeah. All right. Well, I'm back. Don't worry, people. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's okay. It's okay. So okay. So I don't know where I last left off. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's what I was trying to answer, but I don't. Yeah. Callum said, I'm just nervous to pay 45 pounds and end up getting no new information. And, I think that's the issue with a lot of the testing with stuff is sometimes it's just a matter of you have to pay to see if you're even going to get anything. But the one nice thing about Weifel is that it is one of the few places right now available where you can get matches outside of family tree DNA. And in my experience, it has a decent amount of non-family tree DNA testers, especially the whole genome sequencers, because Nebula made it so that it's easy for their testers to link to Weifel. So you may get some, but yeah, I mean, it's a risk. It's certainly a risk. Hey, Brian, nice to have you. We've got How We Got Here Genealogy with Brian Nash. All right, let's see. D. Lawrence, I have two cousins from my grandmother paternal and maternal lines that have native-centric haplogroups. One is C and the other is B2B. Very interesting in the paths each took. Yeah, the haplogroups are always kind of interesting when you really do think about, like, yeah, this is actually like father to son, to son, to son, to son. And it's just, kind of crazy to think about. You ripped a hole in the fabric of space and time. I guess I did. I guess I did. Yeah, I actually, because of that new video that came out, which I need to go and check what comments I have on there. So many messages I'm getting for so much stuff. So, yeah, let's see. I wonder if we should answer any more questions from Reddit or just kind of keep chat. Because I've been going over an hour now. So, okay, there's that jammer question. Mr. Noodle's son. Okay. All right, let's do this one. Why not? Why not? So, I don't know if I'm going to do a full 2 hours today, but yeah. All right. Is anyone else worried about the future of genealogy with the increasing prevalence of AI? Obviously, it's great when you get hints and you're able to find things quickly, but at what point does it get too easy? For me, my best memories of my genealogy journey has been the days where I've been clicking through every page of a collection and I suddenly find the names I've been looking for. The euphoria I experienced in those moments have stayed with me and pushed me to continue researching. My worry is what happens if someone is starting their journey and as soon as they put in their name and their parents' name, they get their whole family tree going back 200 years. I think the joy lessens when you don't have to work for it. Granted, it will never be perfect and will not take into account NPE events, and DNA testing and research will have to be done in those instances. But as far as documented research, it would all be done. I've helped friends do their genealogy. My white friends and most of their trees were already made by others, and sources were pretty concrete. So what are your thoughts? Has it become too easy? Will the process become even easier and make it less fun? And then PM Me Your Seahorse says, this is something that an Icelander or Quebecois person could give an opinion on, as they have thorough databases of their ancestors already. And in all honesty, this is kind of how I felt with a lot of my Dutch Jewish genealogy when I first started. Well, sort of, actually. I guess maybe now it's much more prevalent like that. But when I first started, the Dutch Jewish trees were built very extensively. And there were a lot of separated ones where, it's just a matter of like using collaborative trees to just connect them all together because, they would have the marriages and things, but then wouldn't go into the ancestry of the marriages just because that wasn't any focus on whatever they were posting. And so, there was a lot already built, but in my experience, I still had a lot of interest in, kind of like what you said, once I was able, even with giving all of that stuff, then I was able to be like, well, what about this spot that's empty, and build it out. And then, that was really what got me. So, I'm sure that's going to be less and less as time goes on, but I don't know, it'll be interesting to see how how things progress. You know, I mean, we have a long way to go before we're at a point where there's a huge portion of people where it takes no time to really build their entire family tree. But I guess also in my experience, having worked on a lot of trees that are already built, when it comes down to figuring out the story, sometimes it takes a lot more than you'd think to really understand it in its full narrative sense. And I personally got the best experience at that with one of my recent videos, the one on Drew Durnill's Mormon Pioneer Ancestry. Obviously, coming from a Mormon family, huge amount of the tree already built on Family Search, found elsewhere, largely built already as well. And then looking at his ancestor, Hans Olsen Westenskow, and building out that, you know, that history, trying to build the full narrative of his story took a lot. You know, reading through his autobiography, the autobiographies of multiple sons, of his brother, of his sister, other biographies of the general area, talking with Dr. Lynn Henriksen from Brigham Young University, who is featured in the video, as well as a few other various specialists in different areas with Danish Mormon migration and early Mormon days and things like that. Just, you know, there was a lot to it. And so, you know, there is, you know, certainly a thing in terms of people being inspired to look into that stuff. But I feel like, you know, for a lot of people, when they do see these family trees and really start to think about it, that's when you become interested in the story. And no matter how much AI builds this stuff up, I mean, AI kind of does this already, but until AI not only builds a tree, but then also creates the narrative story of what actually happened with these people, then I think there's a lot more to build. So it's certainly a consideration, I think, to talk about. You know, from my own experience, I'm very much looking forward to what AI may be able to uncover in various fields. I know one of the big ones for me that I've talked about in videos too is using AI for facial recognition. And imagine, you know, uploading your ancestor's picture to a database, and then all of a sudden it spits out a couple of records with their picture on it that you would have never found otherwise because of whatever issues. But you can then, you know, figure that out. Or even, you know, uploading your ancestor's photo and then finding them in famous photos of a large group of people, or identifying people from famous photos that we never could identify. And yeah, so it's a balance, you know. Maybe there is stuff we lose, but then there's also stuff we may gain. So, all right, let's see. AI for the most part is overdoing the private people avoidance. You can't ask it anything genealogically relevant. Yeah, it's not up to snuff to really do research itself at this point. You know, hint generation is technically AI, but it's understood that it has such a low reliability in the way it works that it doesn't just add hints. You've got to go through and manually review it. And the best way to utilize AI right now, especially stuff like Chat GPT, is organizational and workflow uses. So things like, you know, maybe you find a big document online talking about a family tree. You can upload that document into Chat GPT and say, using this document, create a table listing all of the names of the people mentioned, the name or their age, where they would live, and, you know, just things like that. And so it's kind of like an info extraction sort of thing, or a summarizer. So kind of talking about the narrative story sort of thing. One of the things you can do, which actually there is a tool available, and I highly suggest for anything AI really, check out Steve Little's site, AI Genealogy Insights, and looking at genealogy bots, the one that I'm talking about right now, Genealogy Summarizer. You upload a record and tell it, here's this death record. Please give me the summarization of what this record says. And then it tells you in kind of a narrative form of that. So click off that. So yeah, so yeah. Yeah, you know what? I still use microfiche and index card catalogs, even though internet sources are around. There are still things not there. Yeah, and that's a big thing too. Is that even though so much is digitized, a lot of genealogists do need to learn more about accessing non-digitized records. You know, I mean, there are a lot of genealogists that just need to learn how to access non-index digitized records, but non-digitized records is a big thing too. And there's a lot of stuff still out there where you can only access it through microfiche, microfilm, index cards, going to specific archives or libraries. And that's a big part of heritage trips. When I did a Philadelphia trip a few years ago, I was researching my family that lived in Manayunk, Pennsylvania. They owned a store on Main Street in Manayunk, and I went to the Manayunk Roxbury family history um, family history closet's probably the best way to put it. But it was like a small room in a library with so much stuff. And um, actually, I should have kept better in touch with them because they really needed support. And the lady who was running it was quite old. And, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if she's passed at this point. Hopefully not. I would love to see that she's still there. But lots of amazing stuff in there that is not available anywhere else. So same thing with all sorts of other research. My Ashkenazi Jewish tree was extensive, which is the Ashkenazi Jewish trees. If you've got a cousin that was really into it, then you're pretty good off. But for a lot of trees, it takes some work because there's only, at least in my experience. I need to blow my nose. All right. Yeah, let's see. I used AI recently by loading page by page a 600 plus page book about the history of a county in Nova Scotia. And I got AI to build out family trees for the people mentioned was helpful to see connections. Yeah, that's one of the use. AI can take huge amounts of data and then basically it saves you workflow sort of stuff. And you can help it in organizing that information. Um, D. Lawrence, in my DNA results, I also have a trace of Jew. I think the trace comes from what my mother's mitochondrial haplogroup shows. N1B2 originated from a Jewish group way back when. It's certainly possible. I don't really know that much in terms of the mitochondrial haplogroups specific to Jewish populations. I obviously know a few of mine: H1AI1, K1A9, I think it was. But I'm not familiar with N1B2, but that's not one of my specialties really. So it's certainly possible, but if that is giving you the hint, then you know exactly where to research up that purely matrilineal line. By doing more intensely, I found multiple hidden children, and that comes after I spent more time looking for newspaper records about my ancestors' lives. And newspaper records can be super helpful because one of the common things back in the day that a lot of people don't realize now is when people would go on vacation, it would be announced in the newspaper. So and so is visiting so and so from here. And when you find your relative visiting someone from wherever, then it's, sometimes it mentions their relation, sometimes it doesn't, but that could be a really helpful thing. Okay. Drea, late, but you're here. Yeah, it's a Monday, so not my typical streaming time. Yeah, I remember going to a courthouse to find a marriage license for my great great grandpa to his third wife. Those that assisted me were just as excited as I was. Get the hiccups. Excited as I was to find it, especially seeing parents' names on it. Yeah, that's always great. I wonder how long before AI can do our trees with 100% accuracy. I doubt that they could really ever do it with 100% accuracy. I mean, I guess getting even close to that would probably be a long ways away, in my opinion. But I think I imagine within the next 5-10 years, I think we'll probably see family trees being able to be built with AI at a pretty high accuracy. Possibly over 90% accuracy, which is really, really good. there are already tools that are out there that kind of try to do that. I mean, technically, ChatGPT, if you put in the information and prompt it correctly, it will try to build trees for you. Although it gives it to you in a very MS-DOS looking way, so not the prettiest. But 23andMe has it for their DNA testing, where they're using AI to try to build family trees based on just the DNA matching, which that'll be really interesting to see how that goes about in the future. Because right now, what 23andMe does, while it's cool, in the trees that I've seen, well, it gets some stuff kind of right in a general sense. Overall, it's very wrong. And there's a lot of editing that had to be done and moving things around, but it's a very interesting lead up. So I think it may not be too long before we start seeing that stuff. If you want to learn more about Ashkenazi mitochondrial DNA haplogroups, I'd recommend the book The Maternal Genetic Lineages of Ashkenazic Jews by Kevin Allen Brook. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I don't think that's... No, I'm thinking of a different Kevin. Yeah, so not familiar with the research either. So, okay, interesting. Yeah, maybe I'll have to look into that book myself as well. AI would have probably got my great 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 grandma's maiden name wrong. The person that wrote it on the marriage license had bad handwriting. The license was all in English. And that's where we're going to have to start seeing AI getting into the high accuracy percentages, is once AI is able to take that type of stuff into account. Basically, understanding fuzzy matches, fuzzier matches, fuzziest matches, and a lot of the stuff that we do in manipulating search engines, like, at least for anyone that doesn't know, in terms of genealogy research, one of the techniques to really learn is manipulating search engines. So, putting all of the different asterisks or the question marks in the right places, or, different sites have different prompts that you can do in the searching, or, just manipulating things to make it so that, understanding, well, things may have been written wrong, or, understanding it differently. So, AI could lead to that point where it understands, this name's not written quite correctly, but because all of this other stuff matches up the way we would expect it, this seems likely. But at the same time, also being able to understand nuances to disprove that are certain things are connecting to certain things. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, I've been doing this long enough that AI would just regurgitate my tree. Probably, but it depends on where that AI is implemented. So it's like, let's say you find a completely new database that you've never found before. What if there's some sort of an AI tool where, you've already got your family tree built on this site and that database is separate. And so you can do an AI tool that somehow, reads through that other database and then tells you records that it thinks may be useful to you based on your tree, basically kind of hint generation across sites. Or I don't know, there's just so much possibility with it. So yeah, which I wonder if Steve's gonna be at Roots Tech. I don't know if he is or not. Because that would be, if there's anybody I'd really want to see talk about AI, it'd be Steve or Blaine Bettinger. And I know they're giving this GRIP course this year, a new course on virtual stuff. So, yeah, very, very interesting. So, all right, we're gonna. It's a very interesting question and something very much worthwhile to consider. Nation. Go to the Reddit and consider keep up the conversation under this post. It was pretty recent. But then also go to the Discord and you can talk about this in, the community chat or the genealogy chat or things like that. We have a very active Discord. I'm not even going to say answered. I'm going to say reviewed. February 26, 2024. So Geez, I think I might need to start do. I know my European audience doesn't like that, like me starting super late, but we started with like 15 people, and now I'm getting up over the 50s, and I think it's probably because most people are starting to get out of work in the U.S. or, you know, I mean, when I started the stream, it was like in the AM on the East Coast, or not the East Coast, the West Coast. So how long have I been going? I've been going for an hour and a half. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, AI may never get to 100%, but will likely be better than humans someday. Yeah, I'd imagine so. I would imagine so. At least, I mean, I guess we're, better than humans someday overall, but probably still would need human review. My phone is at 2% charger, only works when phone is off. Wow. Cool. Well, I'm about to end the live stream, so it works out perfectly in timing for you, John. Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining. As I mentioned before, on Friday, I will be doing a live stream from Roots Tech. I might do a live stream before then, just testing out my new camera stuff, just to kind of be sure. But be sure to go to the main channel, Genie Vlogger, and let me actually pull that up and put it in the chat, just to make it easy for everyone to go there. But go to the main channel. Okay. That's all. And also be sure to check out the new video about the new tool that came out on GEDmatch, the auto cluster endogamy tool. And then I think this was a pretty good stream today. Started out slow, but we got going. So you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you all on Friday.